The Watch, Chapter 14. Suspect. While talking, Hector would, once in a while, take the watch out to look at it. The woman seemed puzzled, and after a few times she asked about the watch.
Oh!
Hector went into deep mode. He began telling her that some objects were imbued with powerful karmic-type powers. Hector papered his conversation with obtuse and mystical allegories, explaining this object was one of these. He declaring, with animated fervor, that the forces of time had dictated it, had to be removed from the human scene forever. He revealed how this was the real reason for this fishing trip, to pitch this to where it could never be found. The woman listened intently. It turns out her husband was a police officer, a detective. She pried Hector with questions about who it belonged to and what was its story. She, after a few minutes of conversation, was convinced there was far more to this story than just a cursed watch.
Start your engines.
The name Rosa kept coming up. Every time Hector said her name, he would stare off into the ocean outside the cabin window. When she asked how she was, Hector shook his head.
Go ahead.
Gone. The forces of fate have delivered her into the abyss of the past. The woman was now obsessed with his story, further accelerated by his obtuse demeanor. She's so intrigued, even forgetting her physical discomfiture. As far as she was concerned, she was sitting with a penitent Ted Bundy. She excused herself a couple of times to go see how her husband was doing. She, in reality, was relaying the bizarre behavior and conversation to her husband. He told her to get as much information as she could, specifically about him, his travels, and definitely more about this Rosa. She readily agreed and went back inside, continuing to pry information out of Hector, all without raising his suspicions. She discovered through more conversation that Hector also spent a lot of time digging in the desert. On hearing this, the immediate image of grave after grave of hapless women was groping its way across her brain. He explained he was quite active in Arizona, and for a long time had lived in LA, and knew its local deserts very well. She learned Rosa lived in Los Angeles. Hector lamented the collapse of the potential relationship that he knew had always been there, but he had been utterly rejected. He stated the final disposition of the affair. It was dead and stinking. A few moments later, the boat slowed. They had come across a school of fish. Hector had only one thought: pitch this thing over the side and have it 1,000 feet below the waves. He got up. The woman was still talking, but he was like a robot obsessed with ending this. Anglers were all along the sides putting their bait into the water. Hector had the watch in his hand. He made his way to the rail between two fishermen. He was reeling. He was sick, and was desperate to rid himself of this thing. He had it out. The woman came running out, now shouting to the two men he was between and her husband, who was nearby. "He's getting rid of the evidence. I think he's a serial killer." Everyone looked at her like she was nuts. Hector immediately put it all together. All her questions and fake concern were immediately realized as attempts to pin at him to some kind of crimes. He had the watch in his hand. He pulled it back and pitched the glittering thing into the water. As soon as it hit, there was a boil of fish. Men were now shouting and pointing, some yelling, "They're biting on bare hooks!" In an instant, fish were being reeled into the boat.
Start your engines.
The woman was still there, pointing at Hector. But with a boil of fish going on, she was being ignored. Also, the watch was now on its way to the bottom of the ocean. She resigned herself, knowing it could never be retrieved out here. People between hookups did look at Hector as he shuffled his way back into the cabin. He was still seasick, but felt an enormous wave of relief wash over him. The watch was gone, irretrievably so. Sitting there, he heard more commotion on the deck. The boil had died down, but there was a new boil. This was about one fish. By chance, the person who caught this fish was the woman's husband, the detective. There inside the fish's mouth, way down in the gullet, was a shiny gold object.
Copy. Go ahead.
He immediately slit the fish open to reveal nothing other than the watch that Hector had just pitched over the side.